This is exercise 9.135 in MyLabs Plus, where we're asked to calculate the correlation coefficient in two ways. One using row 1 as the x and row 2 as the y, and the other using row 2 as the x and row 1 as the y. Well, I'm going to talk you through a much simpler method that can be used to calculate this correlation than the one that you see used if you go to question help and view an example, which uses the formula, which is a nightmare. Most of you have a graphing calculator, the TI-83 or the TI-84, and your graphing calculator will give you the value of the correlation coefficient if you merely store all of the values of x in one list and all of the values for y in the other list, and then do some other things. So I'm going to talk you through that. And then if you still need help using the formula because you don't have a calculator, just let me know. So on our TI-84 calculators, the first thing we want to do here is step 1, stat edit. The stat button is right next to the left arrow, and then you'll notice that edit is the first option. And it will take you to your lists, which may or may not have numbers in them from a previous problem. Now, if by chance you have numbers in them, the fastest way to get rid of those numbers is to go to your memory, which is second plus, and then option 4 is to clear all lists, and then you hit enter. That just wipes out any numbers that you have so that you don't have to just delete them individually. Then go to Stat, Edit, and in L1 put the values from row 1, which you see I have done, and in L2 put the values from row 2. Now, the way we get correlation to come up on our calculator is to run a linear regression. And linear regression I'll show you this on the next slide, but linear regression, if your diagnostic tools are turned on, then the r and the r squared value will come up with the equation for your line of best fit. But to be sure that our diagnostic tools are turned on, and we should only have to do this once unless our batteries die, then we'll have to do it again. But we want to go to our catalog, and the catalog is second 0. If you arrow down, you'll notice they're in alphabetical order. You want to arrow down until your cursor is sitting on top of the in front of the diagnostic on command, not the off, but the on, and then you hit enter, and you hit enter again. And then it'll say diagnostic on, done. Now that we've turned those diagnostics on, now we'll have our calculator run the linear regression for us. Here's step 3. So we're going to go back to stat again, but now we arrow to the right to the middle option at the top. You notice is calc or for calculate. And then option 4, if you arrow down to option 4, you see lin reg, and you hit enter, and then you hit enter again. Now you may have an operating system that requires you to identify the X list, and this is only if your calculator asks for it. If your calculator doesn't ask for it, then doing what I just described, stat, calc, linear regression, enter, enter, will give you your regression equation along with your diagnostics r and r squared. But in case you have the operating system that says, all right, where have you stored the values of your x's? They call it X list. Then you're going to hit L1. L1, you'll notice, the L1 is above your 1 key in either yellow or in blue, depending upon your calculator. So to get L1, you just type second 1. And then it's going to ask you, possibly, what your Y list is, and then that, of course, is L2. And You'll notice above your 2 key, in either yellow or blue, you have a L2. So you hit second 2 to get it. And then you just go down to calculate, and you hit enter on top of it. And all of us end up with, if we entered our numbers correctly, end up with the same linear regression equation. But in this case, what we're interested in isn't the linear regression equation. We're interested in the value of the correlation coefficient. That's this guy right here. So that's a moderately strong negative linear relationship between these two variables, whatever they represent. Now, the other part of this question says, let's just do it in reverse. Let's do L2 for our X list and L1 for our Y list. So for those of us who don't have the operating system that specifically asks for X list and Y list, then we have to do something a little bit extra to tell it that the X's are in L2 and that the Y's are in L1. And so what we do here is when we go to stat calculate for, then we have to say list 1, or sorry, X's are in list 2, and then comma, which is right above the 7 key, Y's are in list 1. And then we'll hit enter, and we'll find, regardless of which operating system we have, what we'll find is, regardless of if X is L1 and Y is L2 or the reverse, the correlation is still going to be negative 0.724-ish.